Hi, in this video, we'll continue using the replicating portfolio method to put a price on a forward contract whose underlying asset is cost bearing. So in contrast with our previous video, this type of asset actually comes with a cost for holding it. So we need to pay a cost before maturity at time S. So there will be a cash outflow at time S over here. So we'll use the same method to put a price on the forward contract. So again, we'll need to replicate its payoff. So the first bit, we're going to replicate the ST at maturity, which is the same as before. We're just going to long the asset. Okay, we long the asset. So there's going to be a minus S0 for the cash outflow at time 0, and also a minus C over here for the cost for holding it before maturity. And then at maturity, we can sell the underlying asset at the spot price, which is ST over here. Okay, so now we need to offset the minus F over here as well. So we're just going to borrow its present value discounted at the appropriate discount rate. So that's going to be F divided by RT to the power of T. Okay, so the only difference here is now we're going to offset this minus C by a plus C over here, right? So we need to receive the same amount as the cost at time S over here. So how do we receive that? We're going to lend or invest in the bonds or buy the bonds, and so that we pay the present value of the cost. So we can just lend or go on the bonds and then divide this cost by its appropriate discount rate, RS to the power of S, and that should give us the same payoff as the forward contract. Okay, we'll consolidate this as well. So at maturity, we're going to receive ST minus F, so exactly the same payoff. And here, the cost for holding the underlying asset is going to be offset by lending the amounts over here. Okay, so naturally, by the law of one price, we're going to receive the same cash flow as 0 for all our operations here. Okay, so we'll just write it down again. So minus S0, and then minus C, 1 plus RS to the power of S plus F divided by 1 plus RT to the power of T. It's going to equal to 0. Okay, it's going to be equal to 0. So in this case, we're just going to rearrange this a little bit. Okay, so we put F 1 plus RT to the power of T is equal to S0 plus C divided by 1 plus RS to the power of S. Okay, and then we move the denominator from the left hand side to the right hand side. So that's going to be S0 plus RS to the power of S, and then altogether 1 plus RT to the power of T. Okay, so the only difference here is that we actually add back the present value of the cost for holding the underlying, as opposed to subtracting the benefits or the dividends if it's a dividend paying stock or the underlying asset pays you a bit of benefits over here. Okay, so in reality, what kind of asset that would actually incur a cost for holding it? So think about commodities, so physical goods, actual goods, or tangible goods. So if you hold them, there might be a bit of upkeep or storage costs or transportation costs associated with the commodities. So that will be the cost over here. Okay, so this will result in a bit of cost associated with holding the underlying asset, but that's not the whole story. So holding the underlying asset, in this case the commodities, can actually bring you a bit of benefits as well. So holding commodities gets you both the costs and benefits. So how do we calculate the forward price if it's written on a commodity over here? We can just simply combine what we have learned before. So basically the benefits and the costs, let's just combine them together. Okay, so if it's a commodity, and most of these forward contracts are actually based on commodities, they bring you both costs and benefits. Okay, so the costs as I have said before, it's going to be the transportation cost, the upkeep and storage cost. But what about the benefits? So physical goods or physical commodities, they're not going to pay you interest or coupons or dividends like a stock. So, but rather they'll give you the so-called conveniences. So think about a business owner that actually holds the physical stocks. So he could sell the stock whenever he sees fit. Okay, so maybe there is going to be a surge in demand, or there's going to be a surge in the prices before the maturity. So if you're holding the actual stock, you can just sell them on the spot before the maturity, and you can reap the rewards or the profits for the surge in the prices. So it's convenient for the business holder in terms of their business operations for holding the actual assets, in this case the commodities. So they're going to be the conveniences. Okay, the conveniences for holding the underlying asset. Okay, so we're just going to combine both the costs and benefits to derive the forward prices on a underlying asset, on an underlying asset that gives you both costs and benefits. So that's going to be S0, let's call it minus any benefits, let's call it B over here, at some point of time, let's call it T1. Okay, to the power of T1, and plus the costs at some other point, let's call it T2, and then all together 1 plus RT to the power of T. Okay, so this is the final formula or the calculation method for any cost and benefit bearing underlying asset and its forward contract. Okay, so another way we can think of it is the S0 minus the present value of the benefits and plus the present value of the costs, and then altogether multiplied by the 1 plus RT to the power of T. Now, we write it this way because it's not always going to be the case as compounded period by period. Sometimes it could be continuously compounded or compounded otherwise. So let's just call it present value of the benefits and present value of the costs. Okay, and in some ways, or in other textbooks or of the lectures, you might see it differently. So they could combine this thing here with the 1 plus RT over here. So think about, let's just open up the brackets, but then combine this bit with the RT. So you can get another expression of here, which is going to be the S0 and 1 plus RT minus something called the net convenience yield to the power of T. So the net convenience yield would be intuitively the net of your benefits and net of the costs. Okay, and then it is expressed as a percentage. So you can basically think of the present value of the benefits and the present value of the cost already being expressed as a percentage that is going to affect your RT or the maturities discount rate at this point. Okay, so sometimes it's called the net convenience yield, which is exactly the same as calculating the present value of the benefits and the present value of the costs. It's just being expressed as a percentage. Okay, so this thing is going to be a percentage, just like the RT or the interest rate or discount rate here. Okay, so now we have concluded the calculation method for the forward price, for the forward contract, of the prices of the forward contract. So sometimes you might run into exam questions or problem sets that gives you both the benefits and the costs. But sometimes if it's easier or more straightforward, you might just run into single benefits or single costs or neither of them at all. Okay, so you will use you just have to use the appropriate method, and the key takeaway here is that you need to be familiar with the replicating portfolio method. Okay, and we'll use it in the future videos as well, and I'll see you there.